Okay, so we're broadcasting on YouTube.
Correct.
And Facebook.
All right. Can you claim the host right now and try to do Facebook yourself?
Oh, it's going to be from my Facebook. Oh,
Yeah. No. The one, but try to do. I cannot do it from here.
yeah. Okay, so I don't know which one is me now. Okay, we're good. Let me see.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I'm ready to. I've been having so much trouble logging in. Can anyone hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to yet another session of I Am Cameroon Saturday live call. Today is very crucial. Hey, before I continue, I'm Sally. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Today's call is one of several calls. It's going to be a series where we will talk about so many things that concern the Cameroonian immigrant community in the US. As we all know, temperatures are high. It's a very complicated political climate right now, but we are going to focus on how the United Nations elections or the new president in office, the president-elect, how his term will affect Cameroonian immigrants. As we know, there is a crisis going on in Cameroon, and a lot of people have fled the country to come to the US, making it through Mexico and all the other jungle roads, and they were provided a status. So what happens to them now is what we're trying to discuss. So today we will have our founder, Ari, who is also the president and CEO of the International Institute of St. Louis that deals with refugees and immigrants as well, give us some insight as to what we could, potentially look forward to. So first off, Ari, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Sally. Pleasure to be here.
Yes. So from your point of view, have you spoken to anyone? Has anyone shared any concerns or fears so far when it comes to immigration in general?
Oh, yes, absolutely. From the day after the elections, we've been fielding calls and we've also seen an increase in activities from concerned immigrants who are worried, concerned, unsure of what is going to become of their current status if the newly elected or the incoming administration were to make good on its promise to mass deport people from the country. So those are people have been calling, especially those who have acquired what they call humanitarian parolee status or temporary protective status. But it's interesting that we've also seen generally interest, even our concerns from permanent residents, and to a lesser extent, but even also had fielded questions with reference to that, even from citizens, as there has been a conversation about denaturalization, something that, there are people who are part of the incoming administration that have had conversations about denaturalization as well. So yes, we're getting a lot of concerns.
Okay. Well, that is very good to know because it's such trying times and everyone is trying to gather as much information as they can. But before we continue, I'd like to give a quick disclaimer. We are not here to give legal advice. This is not legal advice. We are only here to highlight some key factors or some points that you might want to take to your immigration lawyer. So this is in no way, shape, or form legal counsel. All right. So I had to throw that disclaimer out there. So now let's start with some myths. I can't speak English today. So we're gonna go with our myth busters this morning. Okay. So you said something about naturalization. Now we have so many things that come into question. We have naturalization, we have citizenship by birth, and then we have marriage to a citizen. Now there's been a lot of talks going around about the cancellation of the program of citizens marrying non-citizens, and then they become they get a permanent residence, which is a green card, and then after a while they naturalize. So is it a myth, or is that a possibility to see that this process are redone or just come to a grinding halt?
Yeah. So it's to an extent, but let me say it's a myth. I know that there was that ruling in the court recently, but if you look at the specifics of the ruling itself, this was really in reference to somebody who comes in the country in a way that they're not inspected on entry, and that's really key to all of these conversations that we're going to have, because. So let me dispel the myth simply. yes, American citizens can still marry immigrants, and those immigrants can acquire citizenship by way of marriage because that's the law. The circumstances of various cases vary, and really what varies is how you came into the country. If you came into the country illegally, that means if you were not inspected on entry, it changes the circumstances of your case. So yeah,
Right.
that to dispel the myth, you can still marry and get citizenship from the marriage.
Okay.
Now,
So-
with a caveat that the intention is not to get citizenship. A good faith marriage will lead to you acquiring citizenship.
Right. Just like the law requires, it has to be a real marriage.
Yeah.
You guys have to live together, you need to file taxes together. It has to be an actual marriage, you know. So
Yeah.
just so we put that out there. So, okay, that's the one. Now, how about citizenship by birth? We have seen people who travel to the United States to have their babies. And before now, those babies will automatically be United States or American citizens. Would that still continue even if the status of the parents even if they're on a B1 or B2 visa? Would their children or their babies being born in the US still be considered American citizen, or is that also would that also be a process that will be further inspected or maybe changed a little?
As far as we are concerned, currently it is the law of the land. It is the 14th Amendment grants the right of citizenship to anyone that is born in the United States. For that to change, there has to be an amendment of the Constitution. An amendment of the Constitution is something that is really, really a high bar to attain. So yes, there are ongoing conversations, but that would really be a tough hill to climb if they have to change that. So as at this point, we do not foresee any changes in the near future.
Okay. You know, I'm so glad that we're getting to talk about this, because with the tension being very high now, there's a lot of information out there, and this is the perfect time to be able to, you know, just separate what is a myth and just get the real information to help your case. And so we know of 20,000 Cameroonians that received the temporary protected status from the Biden administration. With the Trump administration, there is a lot of uncertainty what will happen to those 20,000 immigrants. And we still know that there are a lot of Cameroonians who are still on the border, some of who are just making it to the country as we speak. But for those who got that temporary protective status, what do you think might become of that status? Will it be rescinded? Will it be maintained? How do these things work? Is it possible for a new administration to come in and rewrite everything from the jump?
So in circumstances like this, we go by what we know, right? So temporary protective status is typically given for a period of time. And so in the case of Cameroon, the temporary protective status is given for 18 months. And the current one began in December 2023, I think December 8th, and extends until June 2025.
Okay.
So if you were in the country before October 6th of 2023, then you qualify for temporary protective status. Here's what I'm going to say. if you haven't applied, apply now so that you're in the process of getting the temporary protective status. If you have the temporary protective status, make sure you apply for your employment authorization. Here's something that people must know. They usually give you the first employment authorization, which is temporary. And then after a year, you can apply for a 5-year employment authorization. So if you currently have that first one, so if you had temporary protective status and you had that employment authorization for the first year, even if you had it yesterday, go ahead now and apply for the next one, which grants you employment authorization for 5 years, so that you put all these things in motion. Usually, if we went during the last Trump administration, he didn't disrupt existing temporary protective statuses.
Okay.
He waited for them to expire and then didn't renew, right? And I think this happened for Sierra Leone and Haiti and a few other countries during the previous administration. So if we go by that, we suspect that he's going to let them expire and not renew. So expiring in this case would be by the 7th of June, 2025, I believe. So that's what we believe. However, knowing what he knows now, he may just come in and with one executive order, bring those to an end. We believe that there's going to be a lot of challenges and a lot of confusion because people have existing employment authorizations, disrupting the economy and all of that. What I would say to everybody is, this is the time, capitalize on that. If you're wondering whether you should file temporary protective status or asylum, file both. Make your chances, take every opportunity and keep it going. That's what I would suggest. So maybe as time goes on in the next few weeks, we're going to have more clarification as to the course of action that's going to be taken. But at this time, we're speculating based on what we know from the past and based on what the law is.
So I do have a follow-up question regarding that. If there's one thing that we know about the United States is that the president, even after an order is passed, we saw that with the student loan forgiveness program, where Biden had passed the order for student loan forgiveness for up to, I think, $25,000, if I'm not mistaken. And that order had to go through the Supreme Court, and that was shut down. So is it still going to be the same with this temporary protective plan? Because as we know, the US is not one of those countries where a president can just pass a law and it goes into effect immediately. It has to go sometimes through the Supreme Court, it has to go through the House of Representatives, it has to go through the Senate and all of that. Do you think that that process will be respected in this administration? So after the presidential election, I wasn't following anymore when the results came out. So I don't know if the House is blue or red. But do you think that procedure will still be respected as to go through the House and the Senate, or maybe even the Supreme Court?
Well, let me just start by saying the president-elect is coming in with the Senate and the House in his column. So there's likely to be a lot more, he has a lot more leeway to do more. But I think the president is going to leverage the power of executive orders, because executive orders do not necessarily need to go through the grind of the legislature. So executive orders are what they are, to be executed. Executive orders do not change law because the president doesn't legislate. Executive orders cannot go against the Constitution. And so that's why every time there is an executive order, if if it's going to impact people, then there is likely to be challenges, and challenges take place in the courts through the judiciary. And so, yes, there will be challenges to almost every executive order. As a result of those challenges, some of those executive orders can be stayed for a period of time whilst it's being adjudicated through the courts.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes just by staying the execution of an order could actually give people who may be impacted by it enough time to resolve the situation in which they find themselves. So yes, there are groups now that are lawyering up, that are prepared to challenge these executive orders as they come as they're being enacted. So yes, there will be challenges, right? The main what the uncertainty that is created now is going to be him rescinding existing executive orders. So existing executive orders
Is that possible?
Yes, every new president that comes in typically looks at some of the executive orders of the previous administration.
Mm-hmm.
Some are upheld, but some will keep it not upheld. Others they rescind, and that happened not only as a result of the incoming administration, but it's been ongoing in the United States that the incoming president may enact new executive orders, and so that's what we're going to see. What we don't know at this time is what executive orders are going to be enacted and who is going to be targeted first in those executive orders.
Wow. This is, yeah, there's a lot at stake. If we can just put it that way, there's a lot at stake. So let's talk about fees. When during Donald Trump's first term in office, we did see a lot of immigration procedure prices jacked up. The prices went up. Some of them went up ridiculously, like the price to apply for a green card, or the price to apply for naturalization forms. That price has constantly been going up, which we see that all the time, but it went up really, really bad during his administration. So is that something that Cameroonian immigrants should look forward to, a price hike in whatever procedure they're trying to do with the USCIS?
I would say yes, categorically. And that's why I'll encourage everybody who is contemplating a process or an application to do so now. If you are contemplating filing for asylum, do so now.
Mm-hmm.
If you qualify and have not filed for temporary protective status, apply now. Even if you're in temporary protective status and you are concerned that it's going to be taken away, apply for asylum now. The most important thing is put yourself, the way you protect yourself is put yourself in a procedure. So when you're in one of the pending procedures, you are protected until that is resolved, right? So applying for asylum protects you until it is resolved. So yes, there's probably going to be hiking fees. Again, this is speculative based on what we know from the the previous administration, the previous Donald Trump administration. So we're probably going to see something like that again in the incoming administration. Again, speculative, but capitalize on the moment. We have just under 65 days to do that.
Right. And if you are watching us this morning, there is a way you can ask questions. Please use the Q&A section of the call to ask all your questions. For our upcoming sessions, we will try to bring in, maybe we'll have an immigration lawyer who would delve more into some other things that the Cameroonian immigrants or the people under the temporary protected status should look forward to and how they can proceed. But meantime, you can catch the rebroadcast of this on Facebook, and also you can sign up on iamcameroon.org to follow more, because we do post our live streams on there as well. So, I'd like to continue on on this topic, because there's a lot at stake, as I had mentioned before. Now, let's talk about travel concerns, right? So there are people who do not necessarily have green cards or permanent residence, or who are not necessarily citizens, but they could travel with like travel documents. Let's say student people that have student visas. Before, they could get some travel documents and go. What is that going to look like? Is it advisable? I mean, December is coming up, right? There's a lot happening back home. Is it advisable for people whose status is a little shaky right now to attempt to leave the country?
Let me start by saying nothing is going to change before January 20th, right? So the new administration is going to start enacting executive orders on January 21st. So nothing is going to change in the short term. But it's time to prepare ourselves. Again, we can only at this point speculate based on what we know. That on day one, there's going to be a Muslim ban. So if you come from, because that happened the last time, and the last time the Muslim ban was challenged in court, and it went through the courts, and the courts actually upheld the ban. So there's likely going to be a Muslim ban. So if you are going to be traveling and you come from a majority Muslim country, then you have concerns if you're coming back after the 21st of January. If you are in transition, I mean, when I say transition, meaning you're changing status, whether you're going from student to getting your permanent residence, or if you're changing status from being here temporary to getting your permanent residence, I would say it's going to be prudent for you to stay in the country whilst you go through that process until you actually have your green card in hand. Then you can be traveling. So if you are in transition, changing of status, I would not recommend that. I mean, you could travel, and you can travel anytime before January 20th. But after January 20th, I would recommend that you wait until you have your green card in hand. And I'm also going to say something that you all may find alarming, but this is something that we have been having conversations in our immigration department at my organization. We are recommending to everyone, including American citizens, some of us, that you have your documents available to prove your status at any time, especially if you're going to find yourself at airports, train stations, or borders of the country. Be prepared to have your documents, to have your status challenged at any time, because again, we can only go with what we knew in the last time, because there were attempts to do that. There were challenges. But unfortunately, people who are here regularly may be caught up in some of these some of the as the new administration attempts to implement some of its executive orders. So that's something that I recommend for everyone. If you are traveling out of the country, make sure that you have everything that can prove at the moment instantly that you are, one, a citizen of the United States or permanent resident. If you have temporary protective status, make sure you have on you, especially those in temporary protective status or those who have the status of parolees, a humanitarian parolees, be sure to have your documents with you at all times. That is just the advice that we're giving everybody, whether you're from Cameroon or not. But that's something that we have to be mindful of at this time.
So to put in plain words, if you came as a Cameroonian, if you came to the US through Mexico, if you were fleeing from the Amazonian War, or if you're one of the internationally displaced persons and you came here as a refugee and you're under the temporary protected status, make sure you have your documents on your person when you leave your house at any point.
Yeah.
So I have 2 more questions to go, and then I'll open the floor to anyone else that would like to ask you a few questions. So we have Tabemas in the chat saying that Trump came as the trifecta with the Supreme Court and the House. So can you, all the things that we heard the president-elect talk about during his campaign sounds very familiar, but some of them were picked up from something known as the Enemy Alien Act. So can you please expatiate on that a little bit, just so everyone watching us this morning understand what is happening?
Yeah. Yes, there's been ongoing conversation about the Enemy Aliens Act of 1798, which is kind of obscure that we're talking about an act that goes back that far. But the Alien Enemies Act actually empowers it. There are 2 parts of it. There's the one that is called the Alien Friends Act. Right? The Alien Friends Act is when you are a citizen of the United States, you are a resident of the United States, but you are considered dangerous, right, to the state. You're a friend of the state, but you're considered dangerous. And your right to citizenship could actually be taken away from you. This inspired the Alien Enemies Act, which in this case, when the country is said to be at war with another country, then the citizens of that country that the United States is at war with could lose their right to citizenship or residence in the United States. This is really important, what I've just said, because in the first instance, we don't need to be at war with the country. The president can consider an individual to be dangerous to the United States. And in so doing, your right to being in the United States can be taken away. That's one. In the second instance, the president can assume that the country is at war with the United States. So when the president uses the word Venezuela is invading our country, in the mind of the reader, understand that as the president is assuming that the country is at war with Venezuela and consequently can take the right of citizenship or residence from Venezuelans. Now, I don't know that we are yet at war with Cameroon in the mind of the president, but I'm just saying that Alien Enemies Act, which is obscure and which was really enacted at the time when this country was really trying to get its independence, right?
Right.
It's actually empowers the president to do a lot. It's a wartime enactment, and it empowers the president to be able to take away. And I think that relying on that, that's where this whole conversation about denaturalization is going to come in. And does that mean that if you are vocal, if you are an activist against the current administration, that you could be targeted leveraging the Alien Enemies Act? I don't know. This is all speculation, and this is with a goal to ensure that we protect ourselves. Now, it's not going to happen automatically because this is the United States, right? And irrespective of the trifecta, there is still this is going to be subject to enormous challenge from activists like some of us. We will challenge this in through the courts and allow the courts to interpret the powers that the president has in each one of the cases.
Right, right. And I also like to chime in and say that we did see a good majority of the Cameroonian community in the US swing red, but we're not here to discuss who voted who. We're just here to discuss how this result and how this administration will affect Cameroonians in particular. So, an act from the 1700s. That is something. So let's talk about citizenship revocation, right? So that has always been in play. There's a lot of fear mongering out there about revoking citizenship, but that has always existed. So Ari, I would like us to highlight the American Constitution on this matter. What does the Constitution, or what are the situations that the Constitution mentions that your citizenship can be revoked that are still in play till this day?
So yeah, citizenship, the right to citizenship can always be revoked when an individual, like I said, is seen as being dangerous to the country. So if you acts of high treason and espionage could actually lead to, I mean, we had a few cases only recently of Chinese citizens whose citizenships were revoked as a result of that. That's US citizens of Chinese origin whose citizenships were revoked as a result of acts of espionage. So that is the law. It currently, the 14th Amendment provides for that your right to citizenship could be taken in circumstances, certain circumstances, especially when it's acquired. That means you were not born here. There was not, you were not a citizen by birth. It can be revoked. And in many cases, the president has the right to revoke those that citizenship when you have this cases of high treason, espionage. Those are circumstances in which it can be done. Now, it comes down to interpretation and definition of whether the crimes you have committed rise up to the level where your citizenship needs to be revoked, and that's left to interpretation of the administration, but also the courts will play a part in that.
So aside from espionage and just high treason, are violent crimes or violent criminals also, is this something that they're being considered for, or have we seen a very violent criminal act that warranted the courts or the government to revoke the citizenship status of a naturalized citizen?
So typically not, but repeated, yes, it could rise to, right? And I would even say that this includes, whilst we talk about citizenship, we should also be noting that the bar is lower for permanent residents, right?
Right,
So
right.
let me just say it's an act of felony, right? Where it is a felony, which means that it's a serious crime, it could have an impact on your residency as well as your acquired citizenship. Again, it all depends on the interpretation of the circumstances, right? A repeated, serious, violent offender is likely going to be a target in the new administration. It has been repeatedly said that if you have, that they would start with this mass deportation and everything is going to target criminals or people with criminal records. So yes, it could be, but again, speculative. It boils down to interpretation.
Okay, so are we looking at, and there are two questions in the Q&A, Ari, which we're going to address right after this. Are we looking at misdemeanors as well, or we're just looking at repeated offenders on like a felony level?
No, we I think in this case it's going to be felonies, right? A misdemeanor can have an impact on on processes that you're applying for. But typically what we have known that really impacts your immigration process is when you're a felon, right? Because misdemeanors are minor crimes. They're crimes, but they're not serious crimes. But felonies are serious crimes. And so we do not envisage that driving with an expired license, for example, could impact your right to residency or citizenship. But
we're not saying that you should.
But will it impact your application for a green card? Probably yes, right?
Okay.
But I don't know that it would lead to them taking away your green card or taking away your citizenship. But it would affect other processes. Will it affect your asylum application? Certainly yes, because so those misdemeanors, and then if you are a repeat offender of several misdemeanors, to the extent that it could be considered a felony, an accumulation to become a felony, it could also impact you. Yes.
Oh, interesting. So, Ari, we're going to take a first question from Tabe Mase in the Q&A section. So she's asking, should one make notarized copies of this documents proving their status and share with their family to carry on their person, that is? These documents, do they need to be notarized, or you just need to have the original copy on you at all times?
Yes, I don't necessarily think that they have to be notarized. I just think that it's good practice to have one notarized copies of your documents and all copies of your documents, because the immigration process accepts copies even without them being notarized, because through the copies we could find the original. So it doesn't necessarily need to be notarized. It's just good practice that if you want to preserve documents, any documents, to the best of your ability, notarization is something you consider, but it's not necessarily, I don't think that is required. Having copies with family members, yes, that may help, especially if you find yourself in circumstances where you cannot prove your status and say you are detained, then family members can have access to those documents to prove your status to the authorities that be.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you so much, Ari. We have 7 more minutes. I'm not seeing. There's another question, but I believe, Ari, you went through that.
We answered that.
Yeah,
Yes.
we did answer that. So I don't see any other questions. But this broadcast will be uploaded on our Facebook. You can go back there and rewatch it and put your questions in the chat, and Ari will answer. So we are going to really look into all the angles of this new administration. Aside from talking to an immigration lawyer, we will also be talking about the healthcare section, which was a big thing during the campaigns and the general elections. When it comes to the women's reproductive rights, we are going to look at it from a different angle of there are a lot of medical professionals that are Cameroonians. We have a lot of Cameroonian nurses, Cameroonian doctors. What does it mean for them? Because if they have to respect all of these laws in their states, they need to find out what their state says about certain reproductive rights, what they can do and what they cannot do. And if they find themselves as a doctor, if you find yourself as a Cameroonian doctor, you find yourself in a situation, God forbid there is another Amber Thurman, what does that mean for you as an immigrant doctor? How do you get to handle that situation? How do you proceed? So those are some of the things we will be exploiting in the coming weeks. But for now, we'll have to wait and hear more from the president-elect to know what his plans are. Because talking in a campaign to a bunch of people is one thing. Now you have the votes. What are the real plans? He will be laying out those plans for us, and we shall be finding out. So we have another question. Is the Cameroonian community using this new environment to team up with other African communities to lobby to have their interests represented? This is from Tabeta Kang.
Yeah. Well, I would say that this is the time for activists to bond together to protect one another. This is the United States. The voices of the people will continue to be heard. And yes, I know that there are ongoing conversations, but I cannot speak to, what's happening because I'm not representing any one of those communities. But I think what we at I Am Cameroon are trying to do is really look out for each other. And whilst we may not have all the answers, we're hoping that we could help, we could guide, and we could bring the resources to support people who may be eventually caught up in the or become targets as a result of the new administration. Just to conclude, because I know we're running out of time, our advice that we're giving everybody now, I just want to reiterate it. One is that we do not know exactly what's going to happen after January 20th. So everything that we're saying is speculative. Two, anybody who is in temporary protective status, please ensure that you have your employment authorization on you at all times. And if you have not applied for a permanent 5-year employment authorization, apply now. Three, if you are in temporary protective status and you are contemplating filing for asylum because your status will expire on June 7th, then file for asylum now. So even if your temporary protective status expires, your asylum case continues to be pending, you can continue to maintain your employment authorization. And then finally, whether you are a permanent resident or as an asylee or in the process of applying for asylum or have acquired temporary protective status, be sure to have documents with you at all times that demonstrate that you are here in the United States. The final thing that I would say is that if you came into this country and you were inspected on entry, if you came through Mexico and you were inspected on entry, you stand a better chance. Now, anybody who came here and was not inspected on entry, those people, even though they don't stand a better chance, they are likely not to be found, right? Because they can be, but anybody who is in the process, temporary protective status and all of that, it is easy to find you. And so at all times have your documents with you. These are really some key things. Now for permanent residents and citizens, that's one that the bar is going to be much higher for them to encroach on you unless you are really a felon or you've committed some really violent crimes considered against the state. So that generally that's what we're looking at. And always remember that all of this is going to be challenged because there are lawyers who are preparing to challenge all of these executive orders that may be coming. But we are going through very uncertain times now. That's what I would say. But you are not alone. The people who are going to be out here protecting you. Worst case scenario, also look for an attorney. Reach out now to have a number of an immigration attorney if you are in one of these uncertain groups, so that you can always refer to the attorney for guidance.
Okay, thank you so much, Ari. We have one last question, which I will quickly answer from Tabetaka. It says, do you have a database of lawyers you can refer us to? No, we do not for now. But when we get an immigration lawyer during our next call, then you can try to make the connections and reach out to them after the call. So thank you so much, Ari, for giving us more insights. And I like to reiterate that Ari is the president and CEO of the International Institute of St. Louis. And they have been able to resettle thousands and thousands of immigrants in the city. So please take whatever he says, everything that he says to heart, because it's something that he deals with on a daily basis, dealing with immigrants and refugees, to be precise. So join us again on our next call. We'll be talking to a lawyer, and the next time we'll be talking to healthcare professionals to see what it means for Cameroonian healthcare workers in the United States. Thank you all so much for joining. Thanks, Tabe Mase, for your, amazing support and research and resources that you provide to us on this show. Thanks everyone for joining. Until next time, I remain your host, Sally, and I will see you guys. Is it next week or in 2 weeks? Well, we'll figure it out. Well, to know that, follow us on Facebook. Turn on your notification bell. Stay tuned. Any announcement will go through Facebook. If we decide to come next week or in 2 weeks, you will find out on Facebook. Thanks, everybody. Have a lovely day, and remember, do not fret. Everything will be okay. Let's protect each other. Bye, guys.